Hi, welcome to the Drama-Free Living Podcast. It's Dennis and Lisa McIntee. And Lisa, today we want to talk about the power of ownership. And I have loved these last couple podcasts because we're going through team talks in some of the different months. And really team talks, if you haven't heard, it's a 52-week subscription service where it's done for you leadership huddles that you can take your team through every week. So if you're a supervisor, manager, whether you got a team of 2, a team of 50, it's done for you. Quick 5-minute lessons where watch a video or here's a script and work through this tool, have this kind of discussion. Here's 4 questions, just a myriad of things done for you. Because what we realized is that as managers, you have so many technical things that you've got to get done and communicate and as you're working with people, but you need some time to develop your team, right? Because the better your team is, the better your results are. And so that's really why it was created. And this particular one, the power of ownership, we cover in month 5 in the 12-week or the 12-month subscription service. But Lisa, you had an interesting survey when we talked about, hey, let's do month 5. You found this and I'd love for you to share it.
Yeah. Okay. So the AP released, or they found a study that was done by Headway, and Headway is like a book condensing service, kind of like a Cliff Notes type of a thing. Yep. And they're like the largest service there. And they discovered that it was lack of motivation and focus. It impedes over 4 in 5 U.S. adults at work. So lack of 4 out of 5 adults are struggling with lack of motivation and focus. And it's 4 out of 5 adults are having problems at work because they are having trouble with motivation and they're having trouble with focus.
Wait, what did you say? I'm having trouble.
Yeah, did you just space out on me?
I spaced out.
You totally spaced out.
I think I'm in the 80%.
I mean, and in addition with that, people talked about COVID brain. It's real. I mean, these different things that kind of come in at us play into this lack of focus and lack of motivation. And what they did is they surveyed 400,000 Americans. And it was just really fascinating because they basically said they discovered that 89% of people, they value self-growth, almost 90%, like 9 out of 10 people, they really value self-growth, but they don't have the motivation to just really pull it off or to really focus on it.
Right, because it's hard.
It's hard.
Right, it's not easy stuff.
You can't do this stuff alone.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why we do team talks. It's kind of like it's a built-in, let's help you grow, help the CEOs, help their managers, help their teams grow. And then 87%, right? 87% of people believe that personal growth should bring pleasure and not struggle, which is very fascinating because personal growth does make you better. It's just sometimes it hurts.
It's a struggle to get there. It's a struggle to get to the pleasure.
Well, and you think about it this way.
I should be pleasurable, but there's a struggle to it.
You think about it this way. One of our sons just went through a very, very quick growing spurt to the point when he was an adolescent, to the point that his legs hurt. I mean, just hurt. They were in so much pain and ended up with Osgood Schlatter's and it's all part of the growing, and because they was growing so fast and then still trying to be active and maintain, a healthy lifestyle or an active lifestyle. And the thing is but other people, like our other 3 kids, didn't deal with that. So sometimes when you're growing, it actually kind of hurts because you're growing so fast.
Well, and let's just say there's this emotional pain, right?
Well, it could be mental too.
Right. Yeah. Mental, emotional.
It could be mental, emotional pain, but then maybe the other 3, they didn't deal with, all those growing pains. And so, 87% of people believe that personal growth should bring pleasure and not struggle. And what I can say is I do agree with that, in that it does bring pleasure in the end.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you can grow, you can go through personal growth, and it's really not a struggle. But there is the situation where sometimes, you just went through a lot of personal growth in the last year and a half, 2 years. And
it's been painful.
And it was really painful. It was really, really a struggle. Yeah. it was good, but it was because you were growing at such a huge rate.
Yeah.
You weren't like everything you do. You weren't just la-di-da-di-da, let me grow, but it's like, let me grow now.
Yeah. Well, at least, and I think we just normalize pain a little bit, right? And go, okay, well, of course I'm experiencing pain. We're going to talk about the power of ownership in just a minute, but I think the reason people don't take ownership is that there's kind of some pain to ownership.
Yeah. And then what's really interesting is 70% of people choose motivation as an area that they want to elevate. So 70%, 7 out of 10 people were like, hey, I really want to increase my ability to be motivated. And that's kind of what we're talking about here is and month 5 of Team Talks talks about the power of ownership. And it's like, how can we help these 70% of Americans?
Yeah. So you might kind of fall in the 70%, right? It's like
7 out of 10 chance you do.
7 out of 10, right? And so I really, want to be more motivated, but there's this pain attached to it, right? And it's almost like this dichotomy of thought. So when really you talk about ownership and really whether it's helping your team take ownership, maybe you increasing your ownership, we have a methodology that we call S.O.S. And really, it's anytime you come in to solve a problem, solve an issue, give feedback, you have to walk through the S.O.S. problem. And so, or S.O.S. methodology to really solve any problem. So there's this problem. And the challenge is that it's S.O.S. It's first see it, then own it, and then solve it. But the challenge, Lisa, is a lot of times people, they just want to quickly solve it.
They want to go, they want to go OSS.
Yeah.
They just want to own it. They just want to.
Well, they just really want to just solve it.
Or they want to go
They want to SOS. They just want to solve it really quick.
They just want to.
And the problem is that then you just kind of like run around dealing with like symptoms and you don't ever get to the real root of the problem. It's sort of like, Lisa, just you see a spider and you go to kill it. I know a guy, maybe this happened one time, where he went to kill it with a big broom and the spider went and ran underneath the freezer in the garage.
And then he told his wife that he got it?
Well, and then he cleaned up the web, right? And just didn't mention to his wife if he got it or not. She just by chance sort of assumed. Speaking for a friend. Right? She just sort of assumed that he got it. But 3 days later, the spider was back building another web. And I was really thinking about how many leaders do this, right? We just spend all of our time and our energy cleaning webs without ever getting really to the root of problems. So it's why we created the S.O.S. methodology. And really it's after working with thousands of leaders, we really discovered, hey, there's some other steps to just solving it. And so this first step, let's just kind of walk through it, is really people have to see it.
Right.
And the truth is that if you can't see it, you can't change it. And I know many times as leaders, we come into situations and we tell people about a problem and they say, well, what's the problem? And what's fascinating is everybody around them knows there's a problem, but if they don't see it's a problem, they can't fix it.
Right.
So what's kind of going on in your brain, Lisa, as I'm kind of going through the see it idea?
Well, I think awareness is the first step out.
Yep.
In anything, awareness is huge.
Yep.
And awareness is the first step. I mean, if you're struggling financially, whether it's in your business or your personal, actually opening up your accounts and looking at them, or opening up the mail and looking at the bills, or opening your books up and looking to see, okay, where are things at really? Because if your head is in the sand and you're playing the ostrich, you're not going to be able to do anything because you're going to be oblivious. And so seeing it and that awareness is the huge first step, because you're going to try to change things and you're going to try to adjust things. But if you don't have a clear picture of what's actually going on, then you're going to be fixing the wrong thing, or you're not going to be fixing it. And then you're going to really be in trouble. Yeah.
It's this continual gap of like how I think it is and how it really is. Right. And the bigger that gap, it's like the more drama there is. Really. And a lot of people, they live with this drama in their lives because it's like, well, I think it's this, but the truth is it's really this. And when you can really come to the point where it's like you just tell the truth. And so, Lisa, what we've discovered, like with helping people see it, is, it's super hard to tell people about themselves. Right. We've discovered that. Right. It's like, hey, you're this and this. Right. And it's like,
that doesn't go well.
It never goes well. Right. And so I think like self-discovery is the best discovery. And so helping people self-discover, helping myself self-discover. And so there's 2 great questions that we really teach team leaders. And this is in month 5 of Team Talks. And we wanted to give it to you today. It's this question: when whatever behavior, right? Because Lisa, the only things you can really kind of give feedback to help people see is you can only give feedback on what you see and what you hear. Right. For example, it's like, you can never speak to like what people think or what people feel or what they value or believe until they give it to you.
Right.
So for example, you're late. And I come to you and say, Lisa, you don't even care about your job. Well,
that's kind of you creating a value judgment against me.
Exactly. And it's not helping you see anything. And really, I can't speak to whether you care. And then it gets even worse because then all of a sudden now we're going to argue about whether you care about your job. And really, Lisa, the problem is you're just coming in late, right? It's like, I just want to fix you coming in late. But all of a sudden now, what are we arguing about? We're arguing about this web of like whether you care or you don't, which is completely arbitrary. Right at the end of the day. And so it's this idea, help people see it's this question. When behavior or words, hey, when you're late or when you say this, how do you think you come across? Mm-hmm. Or how do you think you show up? Or how do you think you're perceived? Or how do you think that makes you look? It's really another third person perspective skill that we talk about so much in our training is like helping you get out of the bottle because you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle and really kind of seeing it.
Yeah.
What's kind of hitting your brain like when we talk about helping people see it?
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, when this happens, how do you think you're perceived?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we do something or we look at something and we don't even think about that. That doesn't even hit our brains.
Yeah.
But actually taking a minute to evaluate, okay, how is that? So, or a better question is if you did this behavior, how do you think I would perceive you? How would that come across to me? And sometimes when you change it and put it into the third person of, making this figment of my imagination person here. Well,
right.
If John was coming in late every day, what would you think? How would you perceive that? I mean, what value would you think he placed on his job or excitement?
Yeah. And I think when you're sharing this with people, you're really just looking for the truth, right? Because the truth will set you free and really just getting people to tell the truth on their own behavior. A great example, Lisa, I don't know if this is probably over 20 years ago, is I remember I was in this team meeting and after the meeting, the senior leader called me into his office and said, hey, I want to talk to you. And I said, yeah, okay. He said, hey, when you said this in the team meeting, he said, how do you think you showed up? And I thought about it and I said, well, sounds kind of arrogant. He said, I was thinking that same thing too. I was thinking that also. But it was like, as soon as I said that sounded arrogant, I was like, I just self-discovered, right? It's because it's like, that's not how I want to be perceived. I don't want to come across that way. But I was in the bottle of my own behavior. And that question really helped me self-discover. Because at the end of the day, Lisa, we can't change anybody's behavior. People do things for their own reasons, right? People are going to behave how they behave. And so to change behavior, the first thing you have to do is you have to see it. And so that's a fantastic question to sort of help people step back and go, I wonder how this looks. Or maybe another great question is like, hey, when we had that interaction, how did you experience me?
Yeah.
That's another great one, right? It's like, hey, when we were in that team meeting, how did you experience me? Because you never want to have like this sort of gap between this is how I was experienced and this is how I think I was. Right? And so it's like, we want to get out of the fantasy land. And a lot of the drama happens in this fantasy land. And that's really why people don't take ownership. Mm-hmm. Another great question to kind of help people see it is this idea of like, hey, when whatever behavior, right? Hey, when you keep coming in late, I really feel frustrated because I think you're not being responsible. Can you help me? Right? Now watch, I didn't tell you weren't being responsible, but I just told you about me. Mm-hmm. And we want to kind of go transparent that way, kind of give people things of us so that in return, they will be vulnerable and transparent with us back. And it's this idea of, really telling people or really like sharing with people, like, this is the experience and this is how I think about it. So what any other ideas on like helping people see it or why it's so important?
I think, we talked in our last podcast about the power of community.
Yeah.
And these honestly, these go hand in hand.
They really do.
Because you can't give yourself awareness very easily. You typically need an outside force. You need another party, whether it's a person or a podcast or a book, but it's something else shining light on who you are and what's going on, because we only have a limited perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great gifts of leadership, right? One of the great gifts of leadership is continuing to give awareness, continuing to help people see their behavior, and then help creating mechanisms and processes where they actually can change. Because at the end of the day, I don't know if you've discovered, but leadership is really a behavior change game. Now, knowing that, you might say, wow, I don't know if I really want to be a leader. Right? But it really is the behavior change game. And what happens many times is we grow into management positions because, hey, we're really faithful. We show up on time. We do great work. And, we're a great team member. And so, hey, you're going to become the leader of the team. And then just sort of like throwing you out there and realizing like, hey, I didn't really get into this to lead a team. I just, we work with a lot of nurse managers who sort of tell us like, hey, I didn't get into managed nurses. I just got into this to help people, and now all of a sudden I'm doing all these management things and I'm not even trained for it. It's really why we created the leadership development group, because we realized, hey, there's a lot of people that were never like equipped for this. At least that's why we created Team Talks.
Yeah,
because we kept hearing from clients, okay, I got to do this huddle. I got to do this weekly team meeting. I got to, do this daily huddle. I got to, get my team together. And what do I do? And I'm scouring the internet trying to find stuff. And so your success is on our mind. So this whole idea of power of ownership is the first thing you got to do is you got to help people see it.
Yep.
And it really is the hardest thing. What happens is that solve it becomes easy when people see it, because you can't solve what you can't see. And then own it. This is the great ownership question is simply, what are you going to do? Right? Because you can't solve people's behavior challenges. And this question, hey, what do you want to do about that problem you have? Now sometimes, Lisa, I think when I say that, I know you think like, it sounds a little arrogant.
Well, to me, it comes across condescending.
Okay. Well, here's what I want you to see. Here's sort of the heart of it. Okay. Because I understand that. It's simply, hey, I think you can solve your own problems. I think you're a powerful person. I think you're super powerful. I think you can solve your problems so much better. I think you can solve them quicker than I can. And it's like, I actually believe in you. I believe in you to solve, instead of going, hey, here's what you're going to do. Here, I'm going to fix this for you. Hey, let me tell you what you're going to do. Right? That almost is more arrogant to me, but it's this idea of like, hey, I think you're powerful enough to solve your own problem. Hey, what do you want to do about that problem?
Yeah, I appreciate your thought behind, hey, what do you want to do about that problem you have? But I think a better way to say it would be, what can you do to own this situation? And that, which goes along with see it, own it, solve it, the S.O.S. is what is it that I can do? Here's the situation, and what can I do? What can I take ownership? How can I own? What part can I take? Can I be responsible for? Like, what is, to me, that gives the power in my hands. And I'm like, okay, I might be powerless in some aspects of this, but there are certain aspects that I can totally take power and control of. And it's like, even though I can't change the situation, how can I own this? Now, honestly, being late every day, there's different levels of ownership that you can take. There's different things. It depends on how much it's in your court and how much that situation is in your power. But there are some things that you really, there's not much you can do to change it, but you can own that. You
can own your response to it.
Yeah.
I think the key thing, Lisa, is you never want to step into the role of the victim, which is super easy to do, right? So, well, it's just a policy. It's just a regulation. Well, listen, you chose to do this, right? You chose to do this job. There's always a piece of ownership. And it's like ownership is the great motivator. It's like when I feel like I can own my life and own my behavior, it just sparks this motivation. But when I feel like, I'm just the victim of it, or like things are happening to me, they're not happening for me, and I just have to take it and just accept it and tolerate it. That's a terrible way to live.
Yeah, there's always something you can do. There's always something you can own in a situation.
Yeah.
If you're late every day, you can own the behavior, or you can own the what is kind of the background causing the behavior. But if it's something that it's out of your hands, then you can at least own your your response to it or
Right.
your reaction to it.
Well, and especially as leaders, it's like you never want to fall in this fatal flaw where it's like you're taking ownership of somebody else. It's like, hey, I'm working harder on your life. I'm working harder on your problems. I'm working harder on your job. Because then you kind of fall into the manager's fatal flaw. It's you doing the work of the people you're supposed to be managing. It's like and the things we say is like, well, it's just easier. I just do it myself. It can take me 5 minutes. Well, if you want it done right, you got to just do it. I always got to correct it. So I might as well just do it myself because they're going to do it wrong anyways. And you have those sort of lies that we kind of believe. And it's like this fatal flaw becomes you doing the work of the person you're supposed to be managing or the person you're supposed to be leading it. And I think as leaders, we got to keep pushing ownership down.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we work with a lot of CEOs and a lot of really high-performing individuals that are responsible for hundreds of people and within organizations. And you can't take on the responsibility of hundreds of people, 500 people that are in your organization that you are ultimately responsible for. And so as leaders, as CEO, as C-suite, you go through and you teach your people, hey, this is how you can own this, or helping them discover, first, this is, let's make sure that you can see what the problem is. Let's increase our awareness, and then let's own our part. So if you've got a situation and there's maybe 25 people involved in this, if that 25-member team that you have in your organization, if they each one owns their own aspect of it and the part that they can own, then that's when you move into, okay, now that we are all owning that little piece of our responsibility, then we can solve it.
Well, Lisa, the thing I'm thinking about is this. I think it was T. Harv Eker who sort of coined this. It's not even a phrase. It's kind of an equation. Is E plus R equals O. The events plus my response determines the outcome. And, the reality is like, you can't control the events, right? I can't control what the federal government's going to do. I can't control a lot of the politics. You can't even control the weather. It's like, Lisa, I can't even control our dog pottying outside sometimes, right? It's like, there's a lot. So I can't control a lot of these outside events. Like you can't control what your higher ups do, or you can't control what employees do, right? There's certain events, but you're totally in charge of your response. And it's this idea you're ridiculously in charge of your response. And that response determines the outcome, not the event. The event does not determine the outcome. And if we're not careful, we sort of just fall into that victim role. And I think that's what we're really kind of talking about with S.O.S. is like, hey, how do we take even more ownership so that we can really like affect the outcome and affect the results?
Yeah. And this all plays into this Headway study, and 70% of people, choosing motivation as an area to elevate, and choosing self-growth. And this seeing it, owning it, solving it. This is ways that we can take ownership, and we can grow, that we can increase our motivation. Because when we take ownership of something, it's amazing the amount of motivation that we have. I know
it's fascinating, isn't it?
If it belongs to me, I'm going to take care of it completely differently than if it belongs to you, or if I'm responsible for it. So there's a rock, there's a goal this quarter that our team is working on, or our company is working on. Well, if it's mine, and my head's going to roll if I don't, perform in this, then it's amazing the amount of motivation I'm going to have.
Well,
because sometimes that motivation has to come from the exterior.
You
from
need some help with
us.
it, right? Yeah, but it's that whole idea. So, Lisa, it's this idea of power of ownership. It's see it. And so think about this is the gift you give people. You give them awareness, you give them the gift of responsibility, and then you give them the gift of motivation. Mm-hmm. And it's all done through this S.O.S. methodology. Is that how do I help people see it? How do I increase ownership? And now here's what's interesting, Lisa. When people see it and they own it, guess what happens like magically?
What?
It's solved. It's solved. It's like you don't even have to work on solving it. It like almost just the answer immediately appears. It sort of gets fixed. But what we've discovered is the real hard work is really helping people see it.
And then helping them own it.
And then help them own it. And then once they see it and own it, it's almost like solutions just sort of appear. It's like magic. It's like, whoa, that's the answer. Okay, we're going to go. Hey, I'm going to go do this. Hey, great answer. Awesome. Go solve it.
Yeah.
So it's see it, own it, solve it. So Lisa, what's the big takeaway for you today?
That just the value of awareness. I mean, the power of ownership is so, there's so much power in ownership. But if you don't have that awareness, or if you don't see it, then you don't even know what you can take ownership of, or what you have control over. And so that the power of awareness is like, yeah, this is how I can take my power back, or this is how I can be a powerful person, because I have discovered that I can own this piece of this situation or this project.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to really take a hold of this whole idea of see it and get a little bit more aggressive on my awareness. And even like asking for feedback. And I think that question, like, hey, how did you experience me in that situation?
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Right. And so I think I'm going to take that back, and I'm going to take it back to clients. I'm going to take it back to our team. I'm going to take it back to some of my personal relationships, some of my friends, and really get some feedback on how I'm experienced. Because I think I say some things that they don't come across like how I mean them.
Right. And they don't come across how you want to be perceived, or how do you want to come across?
Yeah, because people always feel you before they hear you, and if they don't, you got the right words, but they feel something different, and I want to make sure I'm felt the same way. So, Listen, if you want more information on this, it's in Team Talks. It's a 52-week subscription service, and we discovered a little bit of month 5. There's a lot deeper dive during that month that you'll see it, own it, solve it. What do you need to increase? And I think that's it. We'll see you next time on the Drama Free Living podcast.